So you've got one of these and you're having problems with your windows. Either the windows aren't working, or maybe one's dropped. Motor works but it won't come back up again, and then the garage tells you it'll be wanting £300 to £400 to get that fixed. Nonsense! This is what you do. This example is using the driver's door. Take the panel off. Now that's the daunting part, you would think, removal of the panel. Now I've already taken the panel off, it's just sitting in place to show you the parts you need to do to actually remove it. First part is you have to remove 5 screws. Start by prising out the little tray with the lid on it. Now that's only held in by a small clip, a small plastic clip on the inside edge, which you just prise out by forcing some flat object between it, and then this part will lift out. When that lifts out, you can see all the parts you need to get at. The motor's in there and so on, but you can't actually reach them. Prise that part out. From the grab handle, lift the front cover of it off. Again, that needs to be prised off, it's quite tricky. There is a little rectangular slot at the back of this which you could maybe force something through, because a clip does engage with that, but since it's just gently prise it off, try not to break too many of the parts, the little clips on it. That will reveal 2 screw holes. One at the top containing a torque screw, which you remove, and then another one at the bottom, a deeper one containing a torque screw. Remove those 2 screws. Behind the door opening lever, there's a little plastic round clip with a small electrical screwdriver. Flip that open. Behind that is another torque screw which I've removed. At the bottom of the door there are 2 further screw holes containing torque screws. One round about the middle and another one just underneath the speaker. Remove those 2 torque screws. Now, it's often suggested you need to prise this little control panel off with the buttons on it, which you can do, and that gives you access to the inside as well. You can see what's going on, but in fact, having taken this off, I didn't actually need to remove that because it didn't hide anything that was needing removed. If you want to prise off, try and prise it off from the front edge rather than the back, because it's actually clipped on with a couple of little clips at the back that hook underneath. So when I was putting it back on, I clipped it under and clipped it down at the front. Having removed those 5 screws, the one behind the door handle, the 2 at the grab handle and the 2 at the bottom, this assembly is nearly ready to come off. There's one more screw hidden behind this cloth panel. Now that cloth panel will come off if you simply go round the outside edge, carefully prising it apart, and when you prise it apart, it just lifts off. It lifts off, and you can actually leave it hanging on the loom going to this part, and then you can see all the offending parts inside. There's the motor, and at the bottom of the motor, screwed on at this edge here, is this Temic control unit, which is the source of all the problem. Now you can buy a reconditioned one for about £50, £10 back if you part exchange for this, so they can repair the gubbins inside it. Or there's several alternatives. I've gone for this alternative here, which is a homemade job by an auto electrician, which costs just about £23. It's bigger and obviously won't clip onto the bottom of the motor, so it's a case of securing it somewhere else inside the cavity. It comes with instructions. So I've got it sitting just in here. But first of all, having got that panel off, and it will just all unclip, you can unhook this bit if you like, but it isn't actually necessary. You can see there's enough clearance for it to hook. There's one more screw. The remaining hidden screws in the middle here, in the middle of the door. Once that screw's gone, that will make 6 altogether. The 5 accessible from the outside, and then the 6th one. And the whole door assembly hangs on the top with hooks that all work down the way into slots. So that if you lift the whole mechanism, if you lift it all up, then it all just comes apart. Now you'd actually need to take the whole thing right off. It all comes apart like that. But having it come apart like that, with these various hooks at the side, there are these hooks that go into those slots, and when you're putting it back on, it all just hooks that way. There's a lip across the top that hooks into this gully here. There are these hooks that all hook inside of these rectangular slots, so you simply push it on and drop it down. Now you could disconnect some of the parts to get better access, but that alone gives you enough room to get at this mechanism. You can now get at the motor. The unit that you were replacing sits underneath it like this. There's a screw at the back which is awkward to get off unless you remove the panel, but you can do it just by carefully using a very small, it's a tiny torque screwdriver. It unclips, and then here's the replacement unit, clipped onto the two parts. So that replacement unit was a case of taking its wires and pressing the pins into the connector slots. There are 6 slots, you're only pressing it into 4 of them, you're not going to get full functionality. And then taking the other end of it and connecting the other end, that's a bit fiddly, this bit's a bit fiddly, unless you remove the panel completely by disconnecting the components, by pressing it just underneath, by connecting them into the pins under the motor. At the same time you can see the other culprit, it's hidden up just now. If I just... Then you can see at the same time, there's that other culprit, that green clip, that would also cost you about £200–300 to have the whole unit repaired. But you only need this little green clip, which you can see just slots on there, and the glass just sits onto it and it lifts up and down on it. And that would cost you about £5 on eBay, instead of £250–300 to replace the whole lot. Now that I've done that, the only thing I need to do with this particular system of using this one instead of reconditioned Temic is I'll need to secure that into place somewhere in the cavity, and maybe put some tape around the connections. But apart from that, it's just hook it all back on together again, hooking it across, lifting it up, hooking it onto the top, putting back the internal screw, and then putting in the 5 external screws, and there it is, all working again.